Crimson Rivers, massacre. Sirius has known from a very young age that a good plan is dependent on 3 factors: preparation, execution, and each individual variable in the aforementioned plan. A good plan has no such thing as unforeseen circumstances, but all variables in a good plan are prepared for unforeseen circumstances anyway, and they execute the plan in spite of them. This is a bad plan. The preparation is good, no doubt. They set up the fires perfectly. The bridge is well built. They all have their roles as well as their rendezvous points. The execution is even going well. James, Regulus, Vanity, Irene, and Matthias do make it to the cave and do as the plan dictates by absolutely cleaning the Death Eaters out. Even Peter is sticking to the plan, though in his nerves he has sped up the process a bit, lighting fires too soon and running too hard to get to the next one, which doesn't give the others much time. Sirius can't blame him for that, really. He undoubtedly is afraid out there on his own, wanting to get everything over and done with as soon as possible. The problem is all the variables. They didn't properly consider them all, even from the beginning. The plan could have been ruined before it ever got started if the group on the way to the cave just so happened to cross paths with the Death Eaters, and it was pure luck that kept that from happening, at least until Peter lit the first fire to get the Death Eaters' attention.
The Death Eaters are a very important variable, and Sirius is worried because no one really gave much thought to them in the unforeseen circumstances that they showed up.
They're all counting on the Death Eaters to be stupid and bloodthirsty enough to follow the fires. And fortunately for them, that does seem to be the case. Somehow the plan is working, despite the fact that it's not a very good one by his standards. "Sirius, my boy," Slughorn says, coming to a stop next to him with a broad smile. "Enjoying the games this year, are we?" "Obviously not, you fucking idiot," Sirius thinks, but he rips his gaze away from the watching screen to smile at Slughorn as diplomatically as possible. Slughorn has hardly left the game maker room, so Sirius has barely seen him the last watch parties. But with the dwindling numbers in the arena, he has a bit less work to do, less lives to fuck with, less chaos to cause. Besides, the ones in the arena are clearly capable of getting into trouble on their own. "They're certainly more intense this year than the one prior," Sirius replies, dipping his head and raising his glass in an unspoken toast to Slughorn, because he's not above buttering him up a bit if that would help James and Regulus. Slughorn chuckles and glances at the screen, clearly pleased with the praise and proud of his work. "I have to say, I owe a portion of the good reviews to your tribute, Sirius. The people are quite invested in their blossoming romance. May I ask how you feel about it?" "Ah," Sirius says softly, raising his glass to take a careful sip and buy himself more time. He has to tread carefully here, as difficult as it is to do with such personal matters. He can't just say that he hates it, purely because it's not everyone else's business. At the very least, James and Regulus deserve their privacy, regardless of Sirius's feelings on the subject. He doesn't really have feelings on the subject, though, quite frankly. He cares more about Regulus and James's survival than their love lives. Still, he can't say that, so... Well, a best friend only wants their best friend to be happy. A sibling only wants their sibling to be happy. I can't deny that I appreciate that they take such comfort from one another." "Well said, my boy," Slughorn muses thoughtfully, watching the screen with mild delight. It takes him a second, but then he looks at Sirius. "You know your brother well, Sirius. I must ask, what holds him back? He's very resistant to James. I've worked out that some of it is just his personality, but he never really breaks past whatever blocks he has up. Sometimes it seems he has feelings for James, yet at other times it seems as if he would kill James just to get away from him. It's very confusing for the viewers, you know?" Sirius clears his throat. Again, he has to be careful. "Yes, a lot of that is just Regulus's personality, as you said. Isn't it more gratifying that way, though? That will they, won't they, everyone is so keen on. Keeps them hooked." Yes, but with no payoff, there's just disappointment, Sirius," Slughorn says in audible disapproval. "I do not intend to leave any viewers disappointed. So what is it, I wonder? What will it take to break through to Regulus? What push does he need? and how can we facilitate it? Sirius briefly pictures shoving his wine glass down Slughorn's throat. Stem first, slowly and painfully. He indulges in the violent fantasy for a moment, fingers twitching around his glass, and then he forces himself to exhale as he banishes the images. It's just sickening how casually Slughorn is talking about controlling lives, outright asking Sirius to give him advice on how to better control his brother to get the results he wants. And Sirius can't just beat the shit out of Slughorn for daring to think he's entitled to anything involving Regulus, or even James for that matter. All he can do is play this smart and try to make this easier for Regulus and James, because Horace Slughorn is missing some very vital information, and it's that Regulus only does what he's willing to do. If there's one thing Sirius knows for sure about his brother, it's that. As far as he can tell, there's very little that would push Regulus to be willing to do what the Hala wants from him, and frankly, the last thing Sirius wants is for it to reach that point. So Sirius clears his throat and says, well, what Regulus really needs is— Sirius, Marlene hisses, abruptly rushing up to stand next to him and clamp down on his arm. Immediately, Sirius and Slughorn both simultaneously focus back on the screens, abandoning the conversation in favor of watching. It becomes apparent what she's worried about instantly. The miniature map in the corner displaying every remaining tribute's position makes it very fucking clear that something is about to go terribly, terribly wrong. The Death Eaters may be bloodthirsty, but they're not as stupid as they need to be for this plan to be foolproof. Peter is just now reaching the third fire point, but the Death Eaters are right behind him, following his trail, and only seconds away from reaching him. Sure, they fell for the trap, but not for long enough that they didn't realize they were being baited. The thing about being bait is that it's too fucking easy to get bitten. Sirius feels his heart drop, darting his gaze back to where the screen shows James and Regulus still helping gather food and supplies with Irene and Matthias. Vanity, in a fit of teenage angst and fury, has boycotted helping with all the pillaging in favor of sitting outside with her pet bug, clearly upset that she's going to have to leave it behind. The 5 of them are safe for now, but the third fire point isn't that far away from the cave, so if Peter doesn't light it, they won't know to leave, and the Death Eaters might make it back before they're gone. It'll be a massacre. Come on, come on, come on, Sirius chants under his breath, watching desperately as Peter fumbles for one of the matches, breathing hard. His hands are shaking. Shit, Marlene whispers. He's not going to make it. No, indeed, he's not, Slughorn agrees, sounding thrilled. It's true. Peter is not going to make it, which becomes obvious the moment the Death Eaters come barreling through the trees, essentially startling him so much that he trips backwards and drops the matches before he ever gets one lit. Sirius holds his breath, waiting for Peter to at least attempt to die for the matches, because if he's going to die, he should still help his friends. If it was Sirius in that situation, that's what he would do. James, too. Regulus? No, he'd probably run, and really, Sirius can't exactly think of him as a bad person for that. It's about survival, right? It turns out that Peter is more like Regulus in this scenario, because he turns and runs without a split second of hesitation. Sirius reaches over and grabs Marlene's hand, the both of them squeezing tight as they watch in tense silence. Maybe it's ridiculous, but Sirius finds himself thinking, "Go, Peter, run!" He hopes he gets away, because if he doesn't, he's going to suffer a really painful death at the hands of those chasing him. Peter does not get away. Willa shoots him with an arrow that lands in the back of his leg, sending him tumbling to the ground with a shout. He scrambles to rip it out, trying to get back to his feet, but the Death Eaters reach him first. Bernice is on him in seconds, launching herself forward to punch him in the face so hard that he hits the ground again. Peter scrambles around on his hands and knees, then grunts when Axis kicks him in the side. Willa joins them, as well as Bernice, and they all start beating Peter right into the ground while Hotch hovers on the edge, knife in hand. Sirius can see Marlene's face screw up at the violence, but he keeps his own neutral, especially with Slughorn so close. It's grotesque to watch, as always. Peter is getting the same treatment that Dylan got at the very start, simply beaten to death. Even with weapons, the Death Eaters see an easy target and decide to make it hurt first. They know how to put on a good show. They know what the viewers want to see. Peter is curled up on his side, groaning and crying, when Bernice abruptly announces, all right, that's enough. I'll kill him. He's from my district, after all. Bernice, please, Peter chokes out, face swollen and bloody as he holds up one shaking hand and feebly tries to crawl away from her. Please don't. Wait, just wait. Please, you know me. You. No hard feelings, Peter, Bernice says, swiveling her sword in her hand as she moves forward. You chose your side, and you'll die for it. You have nothing to offer me. No, please, Peter begs, gasping for air. I'm sorry, Bern. I'm sorry. What do you want? I'll give you anything. Please. Bernice snorts and raises her sword. The only thing I want is Regulus Black and James Potter dead. And you're certainly not going to be able to give me that. Wait, Peter blurts out frantically. Wait, I can give you that. I know where they are. What? Bernice asks, pausing to stare at him. Sirius's heart stops in his chest. No, not this. Peter. No, don't you fucking dare, he thinks, panic immediately flooding his nervous system until he's suddenly shaking. Peter is silent for a moment, then he swallows harshly and rasps, I know where James and Regulus are. I can take you to them. Just please don't kill me. Slowly, Bernice lowers her sword. On your feet, Pettigrew. Sirius watches as Peter slowly, shakily pushes to his feet, barely able to stand up straight and limping on his bad leg. Bernice points her sword at him. Start walking. Sirius struggles to breathe, because without hesitation, Peter does exactly that. He starts walking, slowly but steadily, leading them right to James and Regulus. Well, Slugworth announces, this is about to get interesting. Still no smoke? James asks as Irene comes back over from the mouth of the cave. Not yet, Irene says. Maybe he's trying to give us more time. James glances over at Regulus, who has his lips pressed into a thin line. He looks uneasy, and James can't help but feel the same way. They've all lost track of time, between worrying about Vanity and going through everything in the cave, as well as packing supplies and food. They were relying on Peter's fires to signal them, and now it's starting to feel like they've run over on their time a little too much. And Vanity? James murmurs. Irene sighs. Still sitting outside with Vespa. She's fine, just a little upset. She'll be ready to go when we bring out the bags to her, I'm sure. We're not going to be able to carry all of it, Matthias announces, with a frown as they stare at all the bags they've stuffed full of supplies and food. James grimaces, because they're right. Between the 5 of them, they can only carry maybe 2 bags apiece, while still carting their weapons with them, and Regulus already has a bag of his own. There are 15 bags in all, including Regulus's, which means they'll have to leave 5 bags behind. That's enough for the Death Eaters to survive on, which is counterproductive to what they're going for here. We'll drop the extra in the Crimson River, Regulus declares, glancing around at everyone expectantly. Matthias bites their lip. That's such a waste, though. Yes, but it's better than leaving them behind for the Death Eaters to use, Regulus points out. I can't believe I'm saying this, Irene says wryly, but I'm with Regulus on this one. But what if we made 2 trips? Matthias asks. James shakes his head. Too risky. We're already pushing it now. I'm worried we're running over time limit. I really think we need to go, now. What about Peter? Irene demands. He hasn't lit the last fire, James. Why wouldn't he? There was no cannon, so he's still alive. Regulus cuts in, and James is thankful for how rational he's being right now, because James himself is so anxious and worried that he feels he might vomit. Something could have happened that kept him from making it to the last fire, but there's a chance that he's fine. Maybe he went back to the cave to hide, which means it falls on us to get the fuck out of here. Regulus is right, James agrees. We need to leave. Grab the bags we're tossing and... James! The scream from Vanity outside makes them all freeze in despair, because she sounds downright terrified. And then they're all running for the cave entrance at the same time, weapons in hand and bags forgotten. James is immediately horrified by the scene that greets him outside. Willa is dragging Vanity by the hair across the bridge while she struggles, and on the other side are the rest of the Death Eaters, as well as a beaten Peter. He's on the ground, flat on his back, with Bernice holding him down with her boot on his chest. He isn't moving. "Stop struggling," Willa screeches. "Fuck! If you knock us off this damn bridge, I'll—" "Let me go!" Vanity snarls. They're all running. Of course they are. Desperate to reach Vanity before Willa yanks her to the other side of the bridge. They don't manage to make it in time. James watches it as it happens in slow motion. Willa drags Vanity all the way across and stumbles from the weight as Vanity fights with all her might to get away. And Willa lets out a quiet yelp from how close to the river she is. She sounds scared. Vespa must think so too, because she abruptly flies up from Vanity's shoulder, where she was peacefully resting, almost docile, despite the fact that Vanity must be so scared right now. And yet Vanity isn't the one Vespa stings. Instead, Vespa flies over to Willa and stings her, which causes her to release a scream so shrill and so full of pain that there's no doubt in James's mind that Vanity wasn't lying about the agony of a Horcrux hornet's venom. Willa reflexively tries to squash Vespa where she stung her in the arm, even while tripping backwards. She goes down, still screaming when she hits the river with a splash, and hands immediately raise up to drag her and Vespa under, abruptly cutting off her shriek. "Vespa!" Vanity shouts, scrambling forward, only to cry out when Bernice surges forward from Peter to grab her by the hair and continue dragging her back. The cannon goes off. "Yeah, that's right, Black. Come and get her," Bernice calls, fully just tossing Vanity to the side as Regulus sprints right across the bridge. He's the fastest. Of course, he makes it first. Irene is right behind him, and James is right behind her, with Messias bringing up the rear. Regulus doesn't even hesitate when he makes it over. He slams into Bernice so hard that they both go to the ground in seconds. He fucking flattens her, but Bernice fights back, and she fights dirty. She yanks on his hair, punches and kicks and bites, and Regulus fights back just as hard. Irene makes it over next, and she goes right for Axis, who is rushing over to help Bernice. She doesn't hesitate either, slashing out with her sword across their leg, which makes them shout and stumble to the side. Axis whips around, their hook in hand, and they swing out expertly to catch the blade in the curve of their hook, twisting and yanking to snatch the sword right from Irene's hand. Irene takes it in stride and fully just throws herself at them until they're both just rolling around on the ground with yelps and curses. The thing is, the Death Eaters are outnumbered now. It's just Bernice and Axis, because Hodge clearly isn't going to do anything, or that's what James assumes as he pounds over the bridge, his heart in his throat, because Hodge has never done anything before, so James doesn't even think. "No, no, Hodge, please," Vanity chokes out, trying to crawl backwards as Hodge stoops down over her. Even from here, James can see that his eyes are wide with fear. "Kill her! Fucking kill her! She killed Willa, and she'll kill you next, Hodge!" Bernice bellows, grunting as she slams Regulus's head back against the ground. "No, Hodge, don't!" James shouts, running as hard as he can, making it to the other side in just enough time to watch Hodge slit Vanity's throat. Vanity collapses back, making a horrible gurgling noise, and Hodge gasps as he stumbles to the side, dropping his knife. James goes barreling over, finally reaching them. He doesn't mean to do it, that's the thing. He just shoves Hodge further away, not even aware of his own strength in a state of panic, and Hodge is so small. He's only 14. James doesn't know what he's done until there's a splash. His head whips around as he hits his knees by Vanity, and he only gets one glimpse of Hodge in the water before the hands are dragging him down, just like Willa. James sucks in a deep breath, left reeling from the sight and the realization that he just mindlessly pushed Hodge into the river. He would have turned 15 tomorrow. It takes a minute, even longer than Willa, likely due to the fast-acting venom from Vespa. But then the cannon sounds, leaving Hodge eternally 14. Another choked noise snatches James's attention back to Vanity. She's staring up at him in pure fear, throat coated with blood, some bubbling up from her mouth. James makes a weak noise and shakily cups her throat with his hands, his eyes blurring with tears as he lifts her up to cradle her head against his leg. She tries to speak, but no words come out. "Shh, it's okay, you're okay," James whispers, his voice crackling. A wet breath escapes him, his chest feeling like it's caving in. You're going to be..." Vanity's eyes glaze over, and the cannon sounds. She's limp against him, no pulse in her throat, no breath causing her chest to rise and fall. No, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Vanity, James chokes off because he can't speak through his own tears. He ducks his head forward, sobbing over her helplessly. Sobbing. She never got her first kiss. She never got to fall in love. She never got to go home. Her prince never saved her. Her prince killed her. Her prince is dead. James feels something within him shrivel and die right along with her. Like something inside him has broken with a harsh snap, and it'll never heal the right way again. He clutches her closer to him and weeps through gasping breaths, the world around him seeming to have no meaning at all. Vanity is still holding the vial of venom, the last piece of Vespa she got to have. It's lying in her gently curled palm, bright and shimmering green. With trembling fingers, James reaches out to take it from her, because that's all he'll get to have of Vanity. He clings to it with fingers slick with blood, burying his face in her hair, rocking her back and forth, sobbing. Regulus spits out a mouthful of blood and swings his elbow at Bernice's head, but she manages to catch it and slam his arm down on the ground. Her other forearm presses into his throat, leaving him gasping hoarsely as he fumbles for his dagger and tries to throw her off at the same time. It doesn't work. Bernice presses harder, and the more Regulus struggles, the weaker he feels. It gets difficult to breathe, and his vision starts to go in and out, black spots dancing in front of his eyes as the world warps out of focus. He tips his head back, mouth opening and closing in desperate need of oxygen that he's just not getting. His head is pounding, throbbing, and he can't really feel all of his limbs properly. Is this dying? Is he? Without warning, Bernice is snatched right off him, and Regulus immediately sucks in a deep breath. He chokes on it, coughing and curling up on his side as he reaches up to cradle his throat. In front of him, he can see his savior, Peter. Honestly, Peter can't really do much with how hurt he is, but he puts up a valiant fight. He punches Bernice in the face and manages to dodge one of her hits, but it doesn't take her very long to lash out at what looks like an injury on his leg. He goes down to his knee with a grunt, which gives her time to dive for her sword that Regulus had previously wrestled from her. Peter can clearly tell what she's planning to do, because he hurries to get back on his feet and start off in a limping run. Frankly, Regulus is just grateful for the time that Peter gave him. It allows him to catch his breath and slowly crawl to his feet, finally fumbling for his daggers. Peter is steadily going right for the forest, and Bernice appears agitated enough by him that she can't seem to decide if it's more tempting to follow him or stay here and keep fighting. Bernice whips her head back around to look toward Regulus, her chest heaving and her sword gripped tight. He can practically see the cogs working in her brain. They're severely outnumbered right now. It's just her and Regulus because Matthias and Irene are keeping Axis busy. At the moment, Regulus doesn't know where James is, can't see him from his angle, but he'd heard the cannons and James shouting Vanity's name. He can take a guess. He doesn't let himself think about it, not yet, not now, but he knows. If he listens hard enough, he can hear James weeping, and the sound makes him flinch, so he doesn't listen. "Axis, retreat, you idiot!" Bernice shouts, and then she whirls around and starts sprinting for the forest in the same direction that Peter went in, except Peter is already gone. Regulus goes still, eyes narrowing as he raises his dagger, tracking her as she runs in a zigzag pattern. But it is nonetheless a pattern he can follow, and he tugs his hand back, ready to let his dagger fly. He's going to hit her. He knows he's going to hit her. Which is why it's genuinely infuriating when he's distracted by the sound of Matthias's horrified shout. Grinding his teeth, Regulus lets Bernice go, choosing instead to whip around to see what's wrong. Axis and Irene are going at it, and it's fucking brutal. Axis's hook is buried in Irene's side, but she's not letting that stop her in the least. She just tugs it out, carelessly tossing it aside as she launches herself forward again. The wound isn't deep or fatal, so she should be fine. Behind Axis, Matthias raises their crossbow. The following sequence of events is just a tragedy everyone is too late to stop. Axis grabs Irene and whips around with her in front of them at the same time that Matthias shoots. Matthias doesn't miss. The bolt lands right where they aimed, except it wasn't Irene they were aiming for when they took the shot. It's Irene that releases a choked, wheezing noise as the bolt buries itself in her chest. Matthias's eyes widen, and they drop their crossbow. No, wait, Matthias breathes out. Irene, I... Cursing, Regulus flings his dagger right at Axis, and it lands in the side of their arm, making them yelp and flail backwards. Irene stumbles forward into Matthias's arms, and Axis whirls around to see Regulus. Much like Bernice, they seem to realize what shit they've landed themselves in, and they start backing up slowly, eyeing Regulus warily. They leave the dagger in their arm and start backing up faster when Regulus draws out that last one and holds it at the ready. Help, Regulus, help me! Matthias pleads, trying to hold Irene up, tears in their eyes. Please, I need help. Get her across the bridge now, Regulus orders, moving over to reach down and scoop her legs up. Axis is still backing up, watching, clearly wary about being left alone. Regulus will kill them if he has to, but everything is moving so fast, and Irene is the current priority. The bolt is sticking out of her chest, and she grips it through clenched teeth, but she wisely doesn't remove it as they carry her quickly over the bridge. Regulus still has his dagger in hand, and he keeps a check behind him. Axis is closer to the woods, a bit of distance away, but they've stopped backing up. They're looking up at the sky where a hollow helicopter is flying over them, making trees sway and sending a gale across them. Irene is placed gently on the ground, leaning back against one of the poles as she takes short, labored breaths and cradles the bolt impaling her. Again, Regulus glances back to see where the helicarrier is going, his heart dropping when he spots James on the ground with Vanity sprawled across his legs limply, cradled in his arms. I'm so sorry, Matthias rasps out, drawing Regulus's attention back to the matter at hand. Irene, I'm sorry, I never meant to. It's okay, Irene clenches her teeth and shakes her head, reaching out with a shaking hand to thread her hand in Matthias's hair, tugging their head forward until she can press both of their foreheads together. They both linger there for a moment, and then Matthias pulls back. A look passes between them that somehow, despite everything, makes Irene give them a watery smile. No, Matthias whispers. Please, Irene, please. Irene coughs. I'm not going to make it, Matthias. Even with the supplies here, it's not. She lets out a wheezing breath, grimacing. It won't be enough. I didn't mean to, Matthias chokes out, tears spilling out of their eyes, raising one hand to press the back of their hand against their mouth as they break down crying. I know, Irene wheezes, reaching out to gently pass her hand over her hair. It's okay. You're going to be okay, Matthias. You can... Will you do me a favor? Matthias nods through their tears. Don't watch this part, Irene whispers. I'm going to stay here, go with Regulus, yeah? Go into the cave until the cannon sounds. Go on. Irene, Matthias whispers. Go, Matthias, Irene orders firmly, shakily pushing at their shoulder. I'm sorry, Matthias says, and they keep saying it, chanting it over and over as they weep and get to their feet, frantically stumbling forward to the cave. Hey, Irene calls after them, the word rattling in her chest and making her gasp as she reaches up to clamp down on Regulus's thigh. She smooths out her face when Matthias whips back around, even manages a smile. I love you, kid. Matthias's whole face crumbles, but they dutifully reply with a hoarse, I love you too, and then they're gone. Irene collapses back against the pole with a gasp, her fingers flexing into Regulus's leg. Regulus may not like her, but he doesn't pull away when her hand fumbles for his, holding on so hard that it actually hurts. The helicarrier is close now, and Regulus follows Irene's gaze to see the coffin-like cage claw slowly descending through the air. Think it'll wait for me? Irene rasps. Probably, Regulus admits quietly. He doesn't know if she hears him over the rush of wind or not. So, Irene licks her lips and squeezes her eyes shut, face twisting with pain. This is going to take a while, and I'd really like to get it over and done with. She reaches out with her other hand, fingers trembling as they slide over his hand where he's holding his last dagger. Her eyes flutter open so she can look at him. Show a girl a little mercy, huh? It takes Regulus a second to get what she means. A lump forms in his throat immediately. You want me to finish me off? Yeah, Irene confirms. Surprise, surprise, but this really fucking hurts bad. And I don't want to have to suffer through pulling it out to speed up the process. So, if you would be so kind, Irene, Regulus says softly, eyebrows furrowed. The sooner you do it, the sooner you can get to James. He needs you. Irene swallows when he doesn't move, and she squeezes his hand around his dagger. Please, Regulus, it hurts. Just please. Okay, Regulus whispers, and he squeezes her other hand as he nods and takes a deep breath. He holds her gaze, because she deserves that at least. I'm sorry. Don't be, Irene whispers back. You're helping me, and I have to admit, I did not see that coming. Don't feel bad about this, yeah? I'm really grateful. Thank you. Regulus swallows harshly because he suddenly can't figure out why he didn't like her before. And all he feels for her now is a mixture of sorrow and respect. He lifts his dagger, and he doesn't look away as he does as she asked him to. It's quick, though not entirely painless when she's already in pain to start with, he's sure, but he tries. Her eyes never leave his, and she holds his hand until her own falls slack and the cannon sounds. Regulus's eyes sink shut as he dips his head forward. Axes! At Matthias's shout, Regulus's head snaps up in just enough time to see them come sprinting past with a knife and a spear in one hand each, respectively. Cursing, Regulus launches to his feet and whirls around. Matthias! Matthias, no! Regulus shouts, chasing after them. Regulus's heart drops when he sees that Axes has taken notice of James, who is still holding on to Vanity and doesn't even seem aware that the helicarrier is hovering above him, clearly waiting to scoop Vanity's body the moment James lets go. It's obvious that Axes plans to take advantage of his grief, but Matthias is out for blood, due to their own. The problem is, Axes is close to the bridge again, and Matthias is just barreling for them at full speed. This wouldn't be a problem if Axes wasn't aware of that or within hook-tossing range of the bridge. It happens fast. With just 3 easy lasso swings above their head, Axes tosses his hook to catch the edge of the bridge while Matthias is making their way across, and then they give a harsh yank. The end of the bridge on the bank in front of Regulus goes sailing forward, dipping into the water, making Matthias stumble backwards. Hands instantly come up out of the water, dragging the bridge under and taking Matthias with it, leaving Regulus deserted once again on the other side. Fuck! Fuck! Regulus shouts, pacing back and forth as he shoves his hand through his hair. Axes reels their hook in and waves at him with a playful smile before turning to head right for James, swinging their hook. No, 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 James! James! Regulus, screaming his name, does manage to capture James's attention. He appears to suddenly become aware of what's happening, at least with the helicarrier, which causes him to gently deposit Vanity on the ground and step away. It's clear that he's trying to watch her get lifted out, but sadly, he doesn't have time to do that. The cannon sounds for Matthias, drowning out Regulus shouting James's name in pure desperation. Axis is so close. "James!" Regulus yells again, his heart sinking, because as soon as James turns around, Axis throws her hook, and it embeds itself in James's thigh, so deep that it goes clear across to the other side. Regulus's breath punches out of him as he surges forward as far as he can before he hits the river. With a harsh tug, Axis pulls James right off his feet. James lands flat on his back, grunting and crying out in pain, but Axis doesn't even hesitate. He winds the rope around their arms, then drags a flailing, shouting James across the field and into the forest. Regulus can only stand there and watch, trapped on the other side of the river. "Fuck, fuck, fuck!" Regulus snarls. He paces back and forth again, like an animal in a cage, his mind in an uproar. James. They've got James. Everything just happened so fast, and practically everyone is fucking dead, and Regulus didn't even see everyone die. Matthias, Irene, and Willa, yes, but Vanity and Hodge? He has no fucking idea what happened to them. 5 people dead, just like that. Just that quickly. Irene's body is still behind him, with his dagger still buried between her ribs and in her heart, as close to an instant death as he could get. 45 seconds at most. Vanity has been lifted out, and the helicarrier is indeed flying over to get Irene. He moves over quickly to get his dagger, his heart racing. He's gentle when pulling it out, but he takes the bolt too, trying to wipe away some of the violence that happened to her here. She should be taken home with proof of how she died. He doesn't think she would want that. "I'm sorry," Regulus rasps out one last time, then steps back to watch her get lifted out. Maybe it's stupid, but in his days, he finds something mildly comforting about the fact that Vanity and Irene will be taken from here together. It's not much of a comfort, but it's something. 5 people are dead. 6 people remain. Bernice, Peter, Axis, Juniper, James, and Regulus himself. Regulus finds his bag and cleans his dagger as his mind races, eyes darting along the tree line, waiting for James to come back. He always... Swallowing, Regulus takes a deep breath and slowly releases it. James is still alive. Wherever Axis is taking him, James is still alive. If he has his hatchet... Wait, does he have... Regulus scrambles forward to go right up to the river again, desperately searching the ground on the other side with his gaze. It takes him a second, and for a moment he thinks that James did have his hatchet, which means he would have a weapon to fight with, but no, it's there on the ground, and the sight of it nearly takes Regulus out at the knees. "Okay," Regulus thinks, pacing again as he flexes his fingers around his last dagger. "Okay, it's okay, because James is still alive. There was no cannon, and it's been a few minutes now, so maybe James managed to get away. Maybe he snatched a hook out and somehow managed to hide, and that's the only reason he hasn't come back. Maybe Axis stopped to kill him, because of course they would, and James figured out a way to knock them out and get away." There are a lot of scenarios that pass through Regulus's mind, and none of them matter because no cannon has sounded, which means James is still alive. He just has to stay alive until this fucking river ices over, and then Regulus will find him. Regulus is still set on winning the games, but he can't deny that somewhere, not as deep as it should be, he doesn't want James to die. It's not some big revelation, really. Regulus sort of already knew that, considering the lengths he's gone to help keep James alive. He does know that James is going to die. He has to die at some point, just not now, not yet, not like this, not when Regulus can stop it. He doesn't know if that's his own stupidity, due to the heart flutters and the fact that he's known James practically his whole life, or if it's about Sirius in some way. Because he knows that Sirius will be absolutely fucking wrecked when James dies. And if all Regulus can do is put that off a bit more, just a bit longer, then he can't help but want to. And, well, honestly, Regulus isn't really ready to do this alone. He's not ready for James to leave him yet. He can't. Boom. At the sound of the cannon going off, Regulus goes very still. It's like the whole world stops for a second, and his ears start to ring as pressure builds and builds in his chest. He can't breathe suddenly. He's trying, but he can't, which causes him to put his hand to his chest to see if it actually caved in the way it just felt like it did. It's rising and falling at a rapid rate, but that doesn't make sense because he's not getting enough oxygen. Briefly, he wonders if he somehow got wounded without knowing it, but no, he's fine. It's just superficial injuries from the fight with Bernice. So what's wrong? Something is wrong. He feels... James, he thinks. No, Regulus says out loud. It's cold, hard denial. It doesn't matter if that's the only thing that makes sense, because Axis and James were the only two together. And James is injured. No weapons at all, and... Regulus shakes his head, heaving out a harsh breath, choking on it. Sirius, he rasps. That wasn't him, right? Sirius, that wasn't James. It wasn't. Sirius, was that... Of course, Sirius can't answer him. Sirius likely wouldn't be able to answer him even if he could, if it was James, because he would be. Helplessly, Regulus sinks down on the ground, trying so hard to fucking breathe, but he can't. He doesn't know how. Panic attack. His mind points out from a vague distance, which isn't really helpful information when he can't stop panicking. James, Regulus thinks again. He buries his hands in his hair, rocking back and forth as he struggles to breathe, muffling the broken sounds that fall out of his mouth against his bent knee. Again and again he thinks, James, 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 James. I have to find a way to tell him, Sirius hisses, starting to back up, but Marlene catches his arm. Sirius, there isn't a way you can tell him, Marlene whispers, her voice thick as she tugs him to a harsh halt. Where are you going? What are you going to do? Sirius takes a deep breath, trying to keep his head about him. There are tears in Marlene's eyes, and her face is puffy. She'd been a wreck from the moment Vanity and Hodge died, and Sirius can't deny that it was fucking heartbreaking, knowing the girl had a crush on the boy, and he killed her. James didn't mean to push him, Sirius knows that, but it's still hard to look Marlene directly in the eyes and see her grief right now. At the same time, James had held on to Vanity like he was losing a part of himself while losing her. That makes it hard to look at Marlene too. There's so much pain and loss between them, between everyone. Frank and Emmeline are getting started on getting fucking drunk. Irene and Matthias's deaths were rough. At the time, Frank had admitted that he appreciated what Regulus did for Irene, a mercy killing, one necessary as it was, because Frank wouldn't have had the sponsors to help her anyway. Emmeline lost her last remaining tribute too. The cannon was for Jupiter, not James. It could have been James if not for Jupiter. Axes had indeed been dragging James through the forest, only to fall in a hole. Unbelievably enough, one Jupiter had been digging in preparation for the approaching night. It had given James the time to get the hook out of his leg and run, but Axis killed Juniper, though not without her absolutely beating the fuck out of them first. Unfortunately, Axis had a weapon, so Juniper didn't make it. James got away, though. He's hiding now, because his leg is quite bad, but Axis doesn't know where he went. They may be looking for him, but they're going in the wrong direction, and it won't be long before they'll need to settle down to get ready for the drop in temperature. James is alone in a cave no one's been in before, in a lot of pain, but he's alive. The problem is, Regulus is freaking the fuck out. Genuinely, he's spiraling. Sirius doesn't think he's ever seen Regulus like this, not once in his life. It's that bad. Maybe it's not obvious to most, but Sirius knows his brother, and Regulus is failing to keep it together. Until he knows James is alive, he's going to continue to lose his collective shit. Sirius has to tell him somehow. He has to calm Regulus down, because Regulus needs to find James as soon as fucking possible. He's the key to healing James, because no sponsor wants to send medication until Regulus and James are reunited, wanting more romance between them, because that's more important to them than James's pain. It makes Sirius want to rip the world apart. Makes him want to shake these people, scream in their faces, just fucking lose it on them. These people are enjoying the fact that Regulus seems so upset about thinking James is dead. They're all sick fucks. Sirius has been trying as hard as he can, but no one will do anything so soon, not until they see what Regulus is going to do. So, to help James and to calm Regulus down, Sirius needs to find some way to tell him what's going on. He can't do that through a sponsor. They'll never allow it. It's going to have to be in the arena. Sirius, Marlene says sharply when he pulls away. I need to go, Sirius declares. I'm really sorry about Vanity and Hodge, Marlene. I truly am. I have to go, all right? I have to try. Marlene swallows. Be careful. Don't do anything stupid. Sirius doesn't reply, because it takes something stupid to save his best friend's life and pick up the pieces of his brother. Then he'll do it without hesitation. Here's to hoping that he doesn't have to.